Good evening and welcome to another episode of 1905 as we look ahead to tomorrow's trip to Gillingham. We're coming to you from the Valley and the infamous Range Rover. We're going to hear more about this and the Our Club Your Car campaign from Thomas Sandgaard himself later on in the episode. But first we're going to hear from Lee Bowyer, who's going to look ahead to the clash against the Gills and Steve Evans' men tomorrow. We're also going to hear from Jed Roddy, the club's technical director, who sat down for a special interview last week, which fans were able to see on YouTube earlier this week. We're also going to take a look at another clash against Gillingham, which took place earlier this week in the FA Youth Cup, which the Addicts won through on penalties. So you're going to have a little look at that, highlights you can see on Valley Pass. But first, let's take a look at what Lee Bowyer had to say ahead of tomorrow's game.
Tough place to go. The one thing that his players do is give him 100%. I've seen that in the games that I've watched. They was unlucky against Sunderland and against Fleetwood. They was very unlucky. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a tough game. My players, they'll have to be ready physically, for sure, and then we have to do what I like us to do, and then it'll make it an interesting game.
Lee Bowyer there looking ahead to tomorrow's game against the Gills. Charlton are very much in the driving seat when it comes to past encounters against the men from Kent. 16 wins for us out of the 34 previous encounters. The last time we went to the Priestfield Stadium resulted in a 2-0 win back in 2019. Let's take a look at what happened. So that was the last time Charlton played Gillingham down at the Priestfield. But our under-18s played them as recently as this week on Tuesday evening in the second round of the FA Youth Cup. It was a pretty dramatic affair down at Chatham Town at the Ballville Stadium. A 1-1 draw after extra time. It went to penalties. Here's what happened. Well done to the Young Addicts, a 9-8 victory on penalties and a place in the third round of the FA Youth Cup against Sheffield United to boot. So next up we're going to hear from Jed Roddy, Charlton's technical director, who sat down for an interview which you can see on YouTube in its entirety. He talks about his role at the club since arriving here under Thomas Sandgaard.
I'm looking after all aspects of the football side of the club, so everything from the under-9s to the first team. And obviously, you know, right now the focus is very clearly on making sure that the first team are in good shape. So in the first few weeks, you know, making sure that Steve's properly supported so he can do what he needs to do on the recruitment side, and he's done a fantastic job to bring the guys in that he has done. and then making sure that Lee has got all the resources that he needs to go about doing his job effectively. And again, so far so good. Things seem to be moving really well for us, but there's a lot of work to do. Let's not kid ourselves. This club, I'm not going to pull my punches. This club has been hollowed out from the inside by previous owners, and there's a lot of work to do now to rebuild it. There's been, as I said already, there's some great people that have really worked hard to keep the club going, but they need help, and we need some resources to come in and support. So I think my job in the early stages will be to recognise where we need to do things slightly differently, and maybe do a little bit of restructuring here and there, and just make sure that the first team in the first instance are sustained and supported.
So that was Jed Roddy, another one of the senior appointments made by Thomas Sandgaard since his takeover here at the Valley. So now there's only one person left to hear from, and that's from the man himself, Thomas Sandgaard, who had the brilliant idea to give this Range Rover away to one of you, the Our Club, Your Car campaign. Let's hear from him and why he wanted to do this.
Well, this is probably about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when we eventually were getting the Range Rovers and the Mercedes back that we were repossessing from some of the previous owners and their friends that were driving around in those cars. Some of them were even given out to people like Farnell, that I understand has been working with Southall for several years, including the stuff that happened up in other clubs around Manchester. And so we were getting those Range Rovers back, and some people were talking about, hey, we could have some fun with that. And eventually the conversation got to, hey, why don't we donate one of them to the fans, because they really deserve it. If there's any club that is carried by the fans more than any other clubs, that's really Charlton. The fan base is huge and has been so actively involved in the whole takeover, and obviously very unhappy with how things were run previously. And I thought it would be a great idea to do that.
So there you go, Thomas Sandgaard there discussing the Our Club, Your Car campaign. And if you want to drive this Range Rover away, as Thomas called it, Chris Farnell's Range Rover, you can. And it's only going to cost you a minimum of £10, because that's how much a streaming pass costs for tomorrow's game against Gillingham. For every pass you get between now and the next 9 games, you get an entry into the competition, and one lucky fan will have their name pulled out the hat to drive this Range Rover away. So make sure you're there tomorrow at the Priestfield to follow all the action live on Valley Pass, and maybe you could drive this car away. So what's left to say is, up the addicts.